Hello, my friends, and welcome back. Thank you very much for being with me again today. Welcome to the daily update of the Ukrainian war. And as always, I use the one Ukrainian source and the other one is Russian source. So we have both sides lying to us. Now, as you know, ones who are here frequently, I use an article when I use the Ukrainian side. It comes as an article in the form of an article. And when I use the Russian one, I use it in the form of a map with all these bullets, different colors having different meanings. I usually start with the Ukrainian article and that has a little summary of the day. And then they start talking about what happens in the north, then a little bit in the northeast, then in the east, southeast, and then south. That's how they go. All right, so let's get going with the Ukrainians. Ukrainska Pravda, over 20 combat clashes on 3 main fronts, General Staff report. This article comes from June 29th, 2023. And it says the Russian army focused its main efforts in the Lyman, Bakhmut and Marinka fronts. During the day, there were about 22 combat clashes recorded. So the Russians are focusing on 3, Lyman, Bakhmut, Marinka. So let's see where those guys are. So Lyman is right here, Bakhmut is right here, and Marinka south. So I'm going to make it like this. So Lyman here, right here, but the Russians mention only this. The black bullet means, clashes face to face. Yellow bullet means the Russians downed a airplane or a Ukrainian drone. The blue bullets are Ukrainians shelling the Russian positions. The red bullets are the Russians doing something to the Ukrainians, sometimes shelling, sometimes thwarting reconnaissance or sabotage groups. So this, and Marinka is down here. This is Marinka, Avdiivka right here. Bakhmut is right here under the name of Artemovsk, and then you got Lyman here. So this is where they clash. The Russians claim there were some clashes here as well. So let's go back to the Ukrainians. So the General Staff of the Armed Forces of Ukraine on Facebook information as of 1800, so 6 p.m. on June 29th. According to the General Staff on Thursday, the Russians used 6 S-300 anti-aircraft guided missiles at blah blah blah, I don't read that, and they say in Zaporizhzhia and Shakhtarsk. In addition, during the day, they inflicted 23 airstrikes and carried out about 46 attacks from multiple launch missile systems on the positions of Ukrainian troops and settlements. Now, they start with Volyn, Policia fronts. The operation situation is without significant changes. Now they go a little bit to the east. On the Zaporizhzhia and Shakhtarsk fronts, the Russians carried out mortar and artillery shelling of more than 10 settlements. And on Kupiansk front, the occupier, so far they spoke about this right here, and they say nothing happened, this area. And then they drop to Kupiansk. Kupiansk is right here. Where is it? By Bakhmut, I think it is. Krematorsk, no, it's right here. Right here is Kupiansk. Where are you? Kupiansk. So this is in Kharkiv or Kharkov by the Russians. So they said here in Kupiansk, the occupying units launched airstrikes in the Klislivka area in the Kharkiv Oblast, were subjected to artillery and mortar shelling. So they say the Russians just shelled that area. And if you go on the map here, we have 1, 2, 3. Let's see what they say here. The Zapad battle group hammered Ukrainian troops and military equipment using operational, tactical, and army aviation as well as artillery strikes. And that would be it. Probably the same thing. Russian forces destroyed a US-made AN/TPQ-50 lightweight counter-mortar radar. And here, the Zapad battle group, the same thing as it said in the other one. And here's probably down a drone. So 2 Ukrainian drones were downed here. And now the Ukrainians are going to start talking about this area where we have Lyman and then Bakhmut, Avdiivka, Marinka. This is going to be the Ukrainians' focus right here. On the Lyman front, the Russians carried out unsuccessful offensive operations in the areas of Rozdolivka and Bilohorivka. They inflicted airstrikes near blah 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 in Luhansk Oblast and Lyman and in Donetsk Oblast. More than 5 settlements were shelled. Then they go in Bakhmut. In the Bakhmut front, the Russians conducted unsuccessful offensive operations in the Bakhmut area. He inflicted airstrikes near Bilahora and Avdiivka, Donetsk Oblast. About 10 settlements suffered from artillery shelling by the Russians. You see, here is where the Ukrainians used to claim that they advanced on the flanks of Artemovsk, of Bakhmut. This is Bakhmut. This was taken by Prigozhin and his Wagnerites. So the Ukrainians used to say, until today, that they advance on the flanks. They're not in the city, but supposedly here. Nothing today. The Russians don't mention anything. Let's see what happened here. Russian forces destroyed Ukrainian ammunition depots of the 54th Mechanized Brigade and the 10th Mountain Assault Brigade. And here, where the Ukrainians don't mention anything about this, let's mention it ourselves. The EU battle group successfully repelled attacks by Ukrainian troops. Units of the Center battle group hammered Ukrainian troops using aviation heavy flamethrower systems and artillery strikes. And here, units of the Center battle group hammered Ukrainian troops using aviation heavy, the same thing. Let's see here, Kremenaya. What happened here? The same thing. So we go down here, so we pass Bakhmut, which is here. We go to Avdiivka and Marinka. Let's see what the Ukrainians are saying. On the Avdiivka front, with the support of aviation, the Russians conducted unsuccessful offensive operations in the Avdiivka area. They carried out artillery shelling of more than 5 settlements. So let's see what the Russians are saying in Avdiivka. The EU battle groups successfully repelled attacks by Ukrainian troops. Battles are raging on the outskirts of the city. Now we're going to go down to Marinka. Let's see what the Russians are saying. Battles are raging in the city. And the Ukrainians are saying, on the Marinka front, our defenders repelled all Russian attacks in the area of the city of Marinka. At the same time, the Russians launched airstrikes near to settlements and carried out artillery shelling of more than 10 settlements. We go a little bit south on Shakhtarsk front. The Russian occupation forces carried out unsuccessful offensive operations. It seems like the Russians are conducting offensive operations, not the Ukrainians. The Russians inflicted airstrikes in the areas of Vuhledar and 1, 2, 3 other settlements. Donetsk Oblast, over 10 settlements were shelled. Let's go and see where Vuhledar is, because I know exactly where there is. The Russians call it Uhledar, is right here. It used to be a location where the Ukrainians and the Russians used to fight face to face. So that's according to the Ukrainians. See here is the bombardments from the Ukrainians. Let's pick this one. Ukrainian forces shelled the Kievsky, Kirovsky, districts. They fired 3 MLRS rockets and 66 155mm shells at the city. Let's see, Donetsk. Ukrainian forces fired 6 155mm shells at the city. So they're shelling here. Ukrainian forces fired 6 155. And let's say Zaria. Vladimir Rogov, chairman of the We Are Together with the Russian movement, said that the Ukrainian forces had shelled a residential area, Okay, now we move to Zaporizhzhia. In Zaporizhzhia Oblast, which is this right here next to Kherson, in the south, we have just where supposedly there's clashes face to face and a Ukrainian bombardment. Let's read the Russians first. So it says that Ukrainian forces has shelled the village, destroying residential houses. There were no casualties. And here the clashes. Russian forces struck Ukrainian troops and military equipment of the 106th Territorial Defense Brigade. Let's see what the Ukrainians are reporting. In the Zaporizhzhia and Kherson fronts, the Russians focused their main efforts on preventing the advance of our troops. They inflicted airstrikes in the areas of in Kherson Oblast. In addition, they carried out artillery shelling of more than 25 settlements. According to the General Staff, the Air Force they are done. Now to go to a general interpretation or a little summary. According to the General Staff, the Air Force of the Armed Forces of Ukraine inflicted 11 attacks on clusters of Russian personnel. Units of rocket forces and artillery hit 2 command posts, a radar station, and an artillery unit in combat positions. All right, let's see what the Russians are saying. If you look at the Russians, they claim, for your information, if you're not familiar with the map, here is where Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant is, right here, in Energodar. And this used to be the reservoir. And the dam was blown up right here in Kharkovka. So the dam was blown here. This is here no more. So according to the Russians, the Ukrainians shelled this area. The Russians downed shot down 2 Ukrainian drones, and the Russian forces destroyed an ammunition depot of Ukraine 123rd Territorial Defense Brigade, and they said that the Russians destroyed the remnants of the Ukrainian landing force that had infiltrated the island under the Antonov Bridge, and the Ukrainian forces fired 16 shells at the city. Again, shelled the city, infrastructure, civilians. Ukrainian forces shelled the city. See, okay, that's what it is. So, this is a macro summary of what happened today on the 29th of June 2023. I'm glad we got them both, the Russians and the Ukrainian, updated. So they updated their little channels. Sputnik was a slacker about a month ago, but I see that right now they are back in business. That's it. Thank you very much for being with me again today. I don't see that counteroffensive anywhere by either reports, Russian or the Ukrainians. I don't see anything. Do you? Did you see anything over there? And then self-reporting and the other guys, I don't see where it happens. Stay strong, stay smart, look for the truth, and be just.